Yes. We are late, but we're here, baby. We're talking a little MMA action. We got the UFC 303 card to break down, and I got my man Dan back with me, and not JBC. We upgraded. We got Cage Money, Showdown Christine in the building here. Showdown Christine, I'll throw it to you first. How you feeling on this big card, big UFC 303? Gotta be feeling good.
Oh, I feel great. You know, my Booski Yuri is fighting, so that's always top of the list for me. And I'm getting 2 in 1 year. It's like such a treat. And I can't wait for him to win so I control every single person that's going against him this week.
Yes. I can't wait to be trolled with the Yuri. I am definitely leading on the Yuri hate. I will continue to lead on the Yuri hate because we'll get into it. I don't want to start here. Dan,
not a good look for you.
Yeah, I know. Dan, talk about this card here real quick. How you feeling?
I'm excited, man. It's a great card. International Fight Week. It was looking pretty dire there once all the pullouts started happening, but I think this kind of ended up a little bit stronger as a card overall. I like the main event better. I'm certainly more interested in Pereira Prochazka than I would have been in McGregor Chandler, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, I'm really excited for this fight. I've hopped over to the Yuri side this time around, but yeah, we'll talk about that later. I think either way, it's going to be a banger. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I definitely think they upgraded the last 2 fights for sure. So in general, they upgraded the card. I personally was excited to see Conor McGregor come back and fight just because I wanted to see how he looked. I wanted to see Michael. I like Michael Chandler as a fighter. I like his fights because they're usually pretty fun. So I was pumped to kind of see those guys fight. But overall, it's definitely an upgrade. I mean, you get Pereira and Yuri back on the card for fight 2, and then you get Lopes and Ortega on the card, which that fight's going to be a banger. So I can't wait for that fight. That's actually the fight I'm most excited for, is that one. I think that fight's going to be awesome. Big fan of both those guys. So yeah, we got a good card to break down here. I did see some people in the comments talking about how we went a little too long last show. So I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. Listen, when me and Dan and now Christine are on and we're giving winners, sometimes you're just flowing, you're talking, you don't realize you go an hour and 50. So we're going to try and do our best, but I can't promise anything. All I can say is that I apologize if we go a little long. I'm going to do my best, though. That's what that comment section's for, though, guys. If you want certain things, if you think we could do something better, obviously, respectful critiques to the show, we're fine with that. You can throw them in there, and I will definitely look at them. I know Dan looks at, the show stuff at the end of the week, too. So if there's anything you guys want us to talk more about, or if you like the show and you want to just, show some love in the comment section, you can do that too. So that's what the comment section's for. I also did see the dude who deleted a comment. We won't get into that now, but I did see someone delete a comment after my guy got his 3rd round submission in, and I posted all those winners on Twitter. Dan, I gave that bet out on the show. I think on the show when we talked about it, it was 50-1 or 55-1. But do you remember we talked about this on the show? I gave the bet out, the submission prop. I don't know if you remember it. I threw it in the Discord too.
You for that?
Yeah, I threw it in the Discord too. Just my favorite long shot. So some people in the Discord, I think, got on there. But it was definitely a wild. It was a wild week. I definitely made a good chunk of money last week on not just that bet, but the 2 best bets I gave out, both cash too, both money line bets. So the bets were pretty fire last week, and I made DFS was fine. I did all right in DFS, but the bet side, I made a healthy chunk of money. Yeah, and someone deleted their comment. It was a comment about me putting a certain amount of money on a 3rd round submission, and I'm like, dude, what do you mean? You don't think I'd put $500 on a 3rd round submission? I played $30K in fucking NFL on a Sunday. What's that? So I don't know why you would be like, oh yeah, you won't put $500 on a submission prop. I'll put $500 on a submission prop this week too. I don't really care. It's just for fun.
to someone without like you know, I mean, you and I, most of the people we work with, we have like a gambling bankroll, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got your life bankroll, your gambling bankroll, never the two should meet. And you know, when you've got like sustained success over a long period of time and you build it up, you can afford bigger
Dan,
risk.
ups and downs too. So like when you're winning, like you're gonna press it a little bit. Yeah, you're gonna put more on it. And it just happened when I hit that, I was on like a nice hot streak. You know what I mean? So when I hit that, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna throw a little bit more. I really like the bet. So it just that's what it is for me. Like, you know, when I'm on down streaks, I'll pull back a little bit. I'm smart with that. And then, you know, so it's not always that way, but don't delete your comments though. Just live with it. I'm fine with it. You don't have to delete the comment though. So yeah, that's just that. Time for another long shot. I do like JBC's nickname for me, Johnny Submissions. That was a good nickname. He threw it in the chat last weekend. I do like that, Matty Ice. So I'll give JBC the credit for that. But all right, that's enough of me rambling. Let's get into this card because I don't want to go another hour 50. Let's try and get this through in about an hour and a half if we can here. Boys and girls, we got the first fight here, which I think UFC did an interesting job with where they put certain fights on the card because I really like this first fight. Like it's kind of like spread through. I don't think some fights aren't great. I think they kind of put decent fights all around the card. And this first fight to me is a pretty fun fight. I think we got Ricky Simone, 8,900 for Simone against Vinicius Oliveira at 7,300 on DraftKings here. Dan, I'll throw it to you first here. I like this fight for DFS. I think both guys have upside. And I think this is going to be an interesting fight depending on how it goes. Like I could see it going one of two ways, but the two ways I see it going would land both these guys in a pretty decent DFS scoring spot. So I like this fight overall for DFS. I'm going to be all over it, even though it's the first fight on the card. What say you?
Yeah, great DFS fight. We talk about a lot of the times that they like to open the card with sort of, you know, a better fight, then we'll follow it to kind of like draw you in. I think this is partly that. I think also this matchup is it's like a get right spot for Ricky. You know, Ricky, he's a volume wrestler. They're putting him up against a guy who's got, you know, really poor takedown defense, not a great ground game. The getup is pretty questionable. You know, Vinicius's last time out against Sopaj, he was losing that fight. You know, he was getting thrown around, he was getting controlled, and then Sopaj just straight gassed. Oliveira started to, you know, tee off on him, and then he lands that highlight knee knockout, which is very likely how he was on this card. How he's on this card now, you know, the highlight reel knockout. That's what everybody's going to remember, but everybody's going to forget that he was losing that fight, and he did not look great. He did not look well-rounded. Very dangerous striker, super live to land a knockout, but I tend to think this is more of a get-right spot for Ricky. You know, it's a really good matchup for him, and I think the UFC knows what they're doing there. Yeah, so I've got Ricky by decision. I think he just wrestles the shit out of him for 15. He's not going to gas like Sopaj did. You know, Sopaj was really young, inexperienced, coming in on super short notice. I think Ricky has him covered mostly everywhere. Maybe Vinicius has a bit of an advantage on the feet, you know, especially when it comes to like speed and power. But I think if Ricky can consistently get this one to the ground, that he's going to cruise in a wrestling heavy decision, which should score well on DraftKings. He's got a lot of high scores kind of in his price range, but let me look at the ownership. We've got Ricky at, well, yeah, Ricky's going to be owned. He's going to be, I have him at 31 right now. So I don't know. Compared to the upside, I haven't really built for this slate yet, but I mean, Ricky's got a good upside. He rates out really well. I think he's the play.
Yeah, Christine, I do think the two paths. One path is Ricky Simone just heavy wrestles this dude for 15 minutes, leading to a decision. That's one path. But I also think Oliveira is one of the more dangerous overall dogs on this card from like an upside finishing perspective, where this dude's got power. This dude's got power. He's got power in his kicks, his punches. He does have some ground game, even though he can get controlled at times. How do you see this fight going? Do you see it as Dan, where it's just a heavy wrestling match?
I agree with both of you, actually. I think that Simone is definitely an excellent grappler. It's your classic striker versus grappler matchup where Oliveira, he has KO power, and Simone has 3 of 5 of his losses are by knockout. So he is hittable. He can get knocked out. Oliveira is not great on the mat, and Simone excels on the mat. So it's all about whether or not Oliveira can stuff the takedowns, but he's also shown to be easily taken down. So I will say I'm siding with Dan here, that Simone should be able to get a bunch of takedowns, rack up points, control time. I'm hoping he gets a sub, but I can see him winning by decision as well. But Oliveira is definitely a live dog. And at 7,300, he has the upside because his path would be by knockout.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for DFS, I'm going to be heavy on both these guys. It's kind of a cop out for DFS, but I think I'm going to be like 55-45 or 50-50. I'm going to go all in on this fight, me personally, for my DFS lineups. I just think there's not many dogs with the upside on this card that Vinicius has. And if you look at all of his wins, which he has 20 wins, right? He's 20-3 overall. And he's only went to 2 decisions. So outside of that, he's finishing or getting finished every other fight pretty much. So like 19 of his fights are finishing without going to the card. So that just tells you this guy is dangerous. I think he only has 2 submissions. So the other, 15 are by knockout. So he clearly has the knockout upside. I think Ricky has the wrestling upside for DraftKings.
2 decisions in 23 fights.
Yeah. So that's telling you, though, in 23 fights, it's finish. That's how he fights. He's a dangerous fighter, but he kind of overthrows. Well, I don't think he's going to gas out. I think the problem with him is he overthrows at times because he's like trying to get the knockout. And when you overthrow, you can get taken down easily by someone who's planning to wrestle you. But you got to be careful on your entries because his knees, I mean, we saw the knee that took out Sopai, and, his knees are dangerous. His legs are dangerous. I think he's going to throw a lot of low kicks early. And then Simone's got to be careful of that knee. So I'm going to go with the dog here as my pick. I think plus 205. I think it's just a little wide, to me anyways. So I'm going to take the dog for my bet. But I'm going to be all in on this for DFS. So love this fight.
One more thing, just real quick.
Yep.
Oliveira, I was expecting him to project for higher ownership. He's only coming in at around like 20% right now. And I'm realizing it's because priced right above him is Chasson, who we'll talk about later, but she is massive value now, just due to the line movement throughout the week. So since pricing came out, so she's going to actually probably divert some ownership away from him. So I like Oliveira more as a tournament play now, if he's only going to come in at 20 with that kind of knockout upside.
I think the under 2.5 is solid for -125.
Yeah, because you got I think Ricky Simone has submission upside, just with the way Oliveira, he fights he had an open guard that entire time he was on his back against Sopai last time out. Like he literally was just trying to get out. But when that happens, that's why he got mounted a few times. You can transition. So I think a submission or KO.
Sopai had him in a lot of bad spots throughout that fight, but was just too gassed to do anything about it. He just couldn't.
Yeah.
Simone's not going to have that problem.
Yep. So I like the undercall, Christine. And Oliveira is my highest owned dog, I think, on this card. So I think I got 55% Oliveira. So yeah, I'm going to be heavily invested in him. I got 45% Simone. So I'm going to be in on this fight. Let's go to the next fight on this card. I'm going to definitely get this name right. Reen Tasimura Tassimora, however you want to say it. Christine will probably get it right when she says it. 9,300 against Carlos Hernandez, 6,900. Christine, how bad did I butcher? It's Sura? Is that how you pronounce it?
I think you were Seruya.
Yeah,
Seruya. It's Seruya.
Seruya.
Yeah, there you go. And I
Did you
needed to
get it
hear
right?
someone else say it wrong for me to get it right, because I said
Well,
it
I don't
wrong
even
like
know if
5
I'm
times.
right.
Yeah, I think it's Seruya. So that we'll go with Seruya. That sounds
Yeah,
right. So
it seems
Seruya,
right phonetically.
yeah, 9,300. Hernandez, 6,900. You got to butcher one name at least on the card, obviously.
Won't be the
But
last.
Dan, I'll throw it to you here first. Definitely won't be the last. What do you got here with this fight, Seruya Hernandez?
Yeah, so Seruya, he pushes an insane pace. He's a dominant grappler. He chains, takedown attempts together. He just pushes an insane pace. And from what the tape I saw, which, road to UFC always kind of comes with the caveat that it's not the highest level of competition, but he just thoroughly dominated in just about every fight that I watched. On the other side, Carlos, he's kind of similar. He's like a Tyra Light sort of. You kind of see similar aspects to their game. Really slick grappling. Not the best stand up. So that's where Hernandez is. He's going to have a slight advantage on the feet. I think he's got kind of better boxing, but Seruya, despite not being technically as good of a boxer, I think he has more power. So he's a bit more dangerous on the feet. And Hernandez, he's got pretty terrible takedown defense. He can be taken down pretty much at will. I don't think Seruya will have much of a problem there. The thing is, too, though, is Hernandez has some pretty good get up. He scrambles back to his feet well, and we love that. We love to take the other side of that because it just leaves the door open. Even if Seruya doesn't get an early finish, which I think is fully on the table given his grappling chops. I think even if it goes a full 15, it's just gonna be constant wrestling, grappling exchanges. Because Hernandez, for all his kind of physical and technical shortcomings, as a fighter, there's also pretty massive age gap there, I think. Yeah, Seruya is quite a bit young.
I think Hernandez is 30 and Seruya is 22.
Yeah, and I mean down at these, we talk about it all the time, but down at these lower weight classes, that's that becomes a problem. So I think Seruya's ceiling is sky high here. I'm really not that interested in Hernandez as a dog play, but Seruya is green. He's inexperienced. Hernandez has at least faced UFC level competition a few times and has made a pretty good account of himself each time. But I think Seruya eventually just overwhelms him with pace, and I've got him to win inside the distance.
AJ wants to know, Dan, do you bleach your hair?
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
my stylist bleaches my hair. I don't bleach my hair.
Oh, okay. Now the truth is out. Dan goes to a stylist. That flex. Yeah. Definitely a flex, Christine. My brother tried to. He did actually. My older brother bleached my hair when I was 5. He literally made me a blonde when I was 5. No lie, I had blonde hair for years. It's kind of funny, but I still remember my mom banging on the door screaming, and my brother was just laughing, and I'm just sitting there because he's 10 or 11 years older than me, my older brother. So yeah, I had bleached hair. I had blonde hair for a little bit. It was fine. I was all right as a blonde. Christine, what do you got here in this fight, Seruya and Hernandez?
Yeah, I like Seruya. I think that the UFC is promoting him a little bit. He's a phenomenal wrestler and grappler, good ground and pound. But he's pretty green, as Dan was saying. So we don't know on the feet whether or not he can withstand, the 3 rounds with his cardio. But he'll definitely be going for takedowns and hunting the sub. Hernandez is more well-rounded. He has a better strength of schedule. And he's fought, Tyra, Nascimento, Altamirano. he can defend takedowns pretty well. So I think if Seruya has problems getting him to the mat, if that is the case, that I think Hernandez is also a good play because actually I don't think he's a good play for DFS because he's not going to score that well. So Seruya would be the play for me here because of the grappling upside, multiple takedowns. But he is green. We don't know what he's going to look like here. A lot of these debut fighters also have like the adrenaline dump when they get in the ring. So that's another thing that goes into a lot of these younger debuting fighters and people that are good on the regional scene. You see them in their first fight in the UFC and then they are a dud or they get, adrenaline dump and they end up not being as great as they were projected to be. But I think that Seruya is live for the sub here. He has a really unique grappling style, a lot of unique chokes. So, yeah, I'm on Seruya for sure.
All right. So I guess I'm going to live on an island. JSU is the Zach Morris of high school. I like that comment. Damn, Zach Morris. He looked good. All right. I'll take that all day. But back to this fight. I just think this line is crazy. I mean, Hernandez is plus 360 right now against a dude who, I mean, Dan said, yeah, he's got good grappling, but this dude does not like to get hit. Even just watch his last fight. He was fighting, a guy who wanted to stand, and obviously he's a grappler. He took one clean punch to the face, and he did not like that. He started to scramble. He kind of rushed in for a takedown right after he got hit. You could tell he was hurt. And the one thing Carlos Hernandez does have is better boxing for sure. He's got actually pretty good boxing for someone here. And I do think even though he doesn't have the power, I don't think you need a ton of power against this guy. But what you can't do is get in a grappling match with this guy. So you got to keep it in and out, which Hernandez can do. He can move around, get in and out. He's got to stay on the outside and try and just pick him apart with his boxing, not stay in the pocket too long, and I think he can hurt him. I don't know if he can finish him, but I think he can hurt him. And like Dan said, he can get taken down, but he does have a good get-up game. So even when he gets taken down, he doesn't accept positions. But when you have a really good grappler like this, you got to be careful when you get up. Because if you get up too fast, this dude can transition right to your back.
Right.
So
and there's also the going for takedowns, not getting takedowns, or even having a little bit of control time on the mat and then getting up constantly. I think Seruya being so young and untested, we could see him fading out as it goes into the later rounds as well.
Absolutely. And I think a fun bet, split decision. It's 18-1 for Hernandez. I think that's a fun bet because I could see this going in a way where kind of the first round is his. He starts to slow down because he's trying to get the takedowns. And his takedowns aren't amazing. He's an amazing grappler, but you still got to get it to the mat, right? You still got to get it there. And his takedowns aren't anything, I don't think special. So if Hernandez can defend and then make this into almost like a stand-up boxing match, he has the clear advantage. So I like Hernandez. I think the plus 3.5 is an interesting line for Hernandez as a bet because I do think this fight goes to decision, but I'm going to be low on this fight. I'm going to be fading Seruya in DFS, and I'm going to play some Hernandez just because at 6,900, if he wins at that price tag, it could just be optimal. So even if he doesn't score that great, it still could be decent. So I'm going to be over the field. Dan, what's Hernandez coming in at for ownership right now? What are both these guys coming in at?
Let's see, ownership for Hernandez. Hernandez is coming in at 11, and I've got Ray at 34.
Yeah, so I'm going to be double-ish the field on Hernandez. That'll be easy. Get 20, 25%.
Yeah, I have 9 and 32 for that.
I just think Hernandez is going to have a really hard time dealing with Seruya's speed. That's going to be a huge, huge problem for him.
Yeah, but his speed on the I get what you're saying, but I think his hand speed and him being able to get in and out with his footwork, I think could keep him safe.
So he's got some, he's got some slick grappling, some slick back takes. I think
you still got to get you still got to get it there though. Like he's going to want to back him up against the cage. So you still got to like get him to that spot though. And then you got to execute the takedown from there, which I'm telling you.
A lot. I also, the stuff you guys were saying about Seruya possibly slowing down later in the fight. I really don't think that's going to happen. Like I watched a bunch of his fights where he is pushing an insane pace the entire time deep into fights. And I don't think,
yeah, but that's
Hernandez is going to stop him, you know? I mean, I heard about these prospects who come over from road to UFC, low levels of competition, regionals, whatever. You know, maybe Seruya is going to be a good fade in the future, but I don't think today's the day.
Someone in chat asked Dan how many takedowns was it? Yeah, Daniel said how many takedowns do you think Seruya has here?
I mean, really depends if Hernandez can get up, right? But I could see, you know, multiple takedowns each round if it gets there. So I don't know. I think on average you're probably looking at least like at least 3.
Yeah, I would be careful about comparing this dude to Tatsuro Taira.
Sorry?
No, I'm saying in the chat, Daniel was kind of comparing what happened to Alex Perez when he got his back taken. And I'm like, I'd be careful. This dude isn't Tatsuro Taira. Like, let's not get it twisted.
He's Taira light, you know?
Yeah, he's poor man's Taira right now. He's not there.
He can certainly get there, but he's definitely...
he's not there though right now. Taira on the feet would destroy this dude. Like, destroy.
I think a good bet for this one is a double chance Seruya by sub or Hernandez by decision, plus 105.
I like that. Yeah, plus money on that.
Or if you like the KO for Hernandez, that's plus 135 double chance with the submission.
The problem is I think he's going to be scared to like stay close to him enough to like finish him. You know what I mean? I think he's going to have to be like tactical about, you know, so I don't think he's going to be able to get in the pocket and throw those long boxing combinations because then he has a chance of getting, you know,
and he doesn't have any knockouts.
Well, he got screwed. He should have had that knockout against Bonder. And do you guys remember that? It was the very end of the fight. And he took him down. He threw him down.
He knocked him out on the mat. And then they hit heads.
Yeah, their heads kind of like, you know, hit. And they called it a head clap. I mean, he knocked him out.
It was like a knockout.
It was also one of the worst stoppages ever because the ref let that dude take like 10 elbows to the face. Do you guys remember that? That was crazy. But all right, let's go to the next fight here. We've got Martin Budai again, 9,100 on DraftKings versus Andre Arlovski. Arlovski 7,100 on DraftKings. Dan, I want to start with you. I did see on our pick sheet, not trying to give it away, but you like Arlovski inside the distance. So talk about why you like him here inside the distance.
Bold.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
bold.
Age models going out the window. We're talking heavyweights here. First thing to go is speed. Last thing to go is power. I think the main concerns with Arlovski at this point, obviously, is that he's old, he's slow, he can be knocked out. I think it's a little... People seem to think now that he's a little bit more prone to being knocked out now than he has been in the past. But if you look back at his career, he's kind of had like these spurts of getting knocked out and then being a little more durable. So it's a little more inconsistent than I think just like a straight decline, even though obviously at 45 years old, you're going to physically decline. It's really just more about, you know, the other side, Martin Budai. I just, you know, he pushes a good pace. He throws good volume, but the guy's got no power. Outside of, you know, a recent fight he won by Kimura, he doesn't really show much in the way of offensive wrestling or grappling. So, you know, for 9,100, the peripheral kind of, I call them peripherals outside of striking. That's probably not right. But, you know, the grappling and wrestling scoring just isn't there. He's going to have to he's going to have to land a knockout or, you know, just pour on the volume for 3 rounds. I like Arlovski to land a knockout here, honestly. Like, we saw Budai get overwhelmed by Gaziv last time out, I believe. I believe that was the last time out.
Yep.
That's like a major red flag to me, to be perfectly honest, because Gaziv is, you know, I think Budai should have probably should have done a lot better on the feet in that matchup. So that was concerning to me. I just think probably just my bias against Budai. He's like just a very unimpressive heavyweight to me. And I think Arlovski, you know, he's at least got that like crafty veteran skill, you know, and he's in a lot, you know, his recent wins, he's in a lot of close fights. So he's not, if he's not getting knocked out, you know, he's not getting like destroyed in these fights. They're really, really close. So I think you need to account for that as well. Yeah, I just don't see enough on the Budai side, really. It's kind of less about who Arlovski is, especially at this point, and more about what Budai isn't. And I just don't think Budai is dangerous enough.
Yeah, I'm with you here. This is my take as well. I'm taking Arlovski by decision, but again, it's more about what I think Budai is, which is not a good fighter. Like, I don't think he's very good. So I'm going to take a shot with the dog here. From a DFS perspective, I don't have much of this fight. It's not I don't think it's a very good fight unless you see a finish, but like Dan, I would assume you have a little bit of interest on the dog just because you like him to finish inside the distance at 7,100. That could score okay.
Yeah, and you know, he's projecting I mean, this fight, if it doesn't finish and it is like a split decision type deal, it's not going to score well. I think most of the time this fight doesn't score well. Even if Arlovski wins, I think he's live to miss the optimal, like we saw last week with Pavlovich and Volkov. You know, a lot of times these heavyweights, they get into these kind of low pace, low volume slogs that just don't score well. So I think there's significant risk there. And there are actually some dogs around Arlovski's range that I like more, that I think have more upside that you can fit this week. So I'm not overly excited about either side of this. I will say, though, my projections are getting to a lot of Budai just because he does have, sorry, my screen's a little smaller where I'm at here, so I got to do a little more scrolling. But yeah, you know, Budai has a pretty good ITD number. It's 42% implied. He's got 20% implied to win in round one. So it's kind of a similar spot to last week with Kevin Gastelum. Not that the fighters profile the same, but the matchup is sort of like, you know, we know Kevin Gastelum usually low, like doesn't push volume, doesn't use his wrestling. But what happened last week? You know, threw way more strikes than usual, threw the wrestling, and he ends up optimal on the winning lineup. So you could see a similar thing here for Budai, who this fight is projecting, you know, Budai at 17%, Arlovski at 9%. You know, Budai could be the Kevin Gastelum play of the week this week. So I'm going to probably be a bit over on Arlovski, and I'll probably have around like low 20s on Budai.
Yeah, it makes sense. This seems like a fight you would get in on just from the ownership and the what if
pure ownership
point.
Play,
yeah, it's a pure ownership play. But Christine, what do you got here on this fight?
I kind of agree with both of you. I think that for DFS, I'm not too high on this fight just because the line indicates it should probably go to a decision or may go to a decision. Arlovski's pretty durable. Budai can be a little chinny, but I think in terms of power, if we're in a striking match, I would actually give it to Arlovski, even though he is 13 years older. This might be his retirement fight. We might see him put the gloves, you know, in the ring at the end of this one. And even if that's the case, he'd want to go out in a high. And but in terms of DFS, I'm not a big fan of this fight. I don't think, outside of like Arlovski finishing him early, I don't see where this is going to score really high.
Yep, I agree. Unless you're playing it purely for ownership like Dan, I don't think this is going to be that great of a fight, and I'm going to be out on it. Let's go to the next fight here. We got a woman's fight here. We got Jillian Robertson, 8,700 versus Michelle Waterson Gomez, 7,500 for Gomez here. I'll just start. I think Jillian Roberts is the more dangerous fighter at this stage of their careers. I think she has more of the finishing upside. I do think, though, if this were to go to the cards, Waterson Gomez, it probably has a better chance in a decision. So I think Jillian Roberts can get this done inside the distance. I think she's a decent DFS play just because when she is finishing fights, she is scoring pretty well. at that price tag of 8,700. So I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson inside the distance submission. Most likely, she is very, very dangerous with her grappling. So I think that's her best path. But you still gotta, like I said, you still gotta get it down when you're the grappler. Not the best takedowns for Robertson, but if they find a way to the ground, that's where she wants to be. So yeah, I'm gonna go her inside the distance. Christine, I'll start with you here on this one. What do you see in this fight?
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. I like Jillian Roberts here, although you do have a point. Waterson is live only if she's able to stay off the mat. So basically, she's an excellent striker, but she's not an excellent, sorry. She strikes to set up takedowns, which is where Waterson can take her out. That would be her path, is like Robertson is going for a sub and maybe Waterson clocks her. But if Robertson gets Waterson to the ground, then it's probably over. I can see, I'm torn with how this might score, because I think she can get the sub. And I don't know if she can get multiple takedowns to get the sub, but I do think she can rack up the control time. Let me see her price. Sorry. Yeah, I think 8,700 is a little high, but she can get there. If there's multiple takedowns and she can keep it on the mat, she can get there. But Waterson's definitely a live dog if she can keep it on the feet.
Yeah, I just don't know how well she's going to score in that decision fight. But, you never know. I mean, maybe, 75 in a win, maybe that could be optimal. I don't think it will be, but you never know. Dan, what do you see in this fight?
Yeah, this one is like pretty simple to me. I think Robertson rolls here. I think it's like, I just have in my notes, Jillian smash. Like, Waterson, she's a natural 105er, so she's going to be undersized. She usually is undersized, and going against someone in Jillian whose, main plan of attack is likely going to be get it to the ground and, smash you. I just think it's a horrible matchup for Waterson. There's a massive, we're going to bust out the age model again. She's quite a bit older. She's getting up there. Did I already mention she's 1-7 or 1-6 in her last 7? She's lost 4 straight now. Last time out against Marina Rodriguez, she got, pummeled so badly. She was, in a pile in tears in the octagon. And I thought, this is probably the last time we see her. Yeah, man, I think it's Robertson. I love Robertson as a play. I will say I might be slightly biased because I've won big with Robertson in the past. So whenever she pops up, I'm like, yeah, domination. But I truly think that that's how this one plays out. Waterson does have the striking advantage, but, she doesn't have the power to really make anything of it. She's going to have to win like a 15-minute, point fighting decision. And I just don't see that happening here. Like, again, Robertson, she's going to be bigger, probably stronger, younger, faster. It's Robertson all day for me. And she's only projecting to be 25% owned. I'm definitely going to be trying to get over on that.
Yeah, like if you just look at who they've both fought, obviously Waterson Gomez has fought like the better skilled girls. But like when Robertson is fighting, winning, she's finished 4 of her last 5 opponents when she's winning. So the finishing upside is clearly on her side. And like, even when Waterson Gomez is finishing, it's been a lot of decisions recently when she's won in her past wins, which obviously she hasn't won in her last 4, but like before that, when she's won, it's been a lot of decision wins. So I think the danger's on Robertson's side. I like her to finish. Let's move to the next fight here, which this is the craziest fight ever from the standpoint. This line is insane. And not that I don't think that Peyton Talbot is a good fighter. I think he's a really good fighter. I picked him when he fought Simone. I picked him in both of his first fights. I thought he was the clear guy. And obviously the line was closer his last fight, but what's it like, minus 1,600? Like, what is the line at right now, Dan?
Let me see where it's at right now. I thought it was creeping closer to minus 2,000, but it might have shot back. Sorry,
I'm seeing 1,650 right now on DraftKings.
Yeah, let's see. Bet Online has minus 1,800 for Talbot money line,
which is crazy. Even though I do think he's going to win, I think everyone thinks he's going to win inside the distance. The dude he's fighting, Yanez, just literally got knocked out by Gomez, who's got, I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I did not see him knocking this dude out and finishing him, and he did. So, yeah, I mean, I think this fight is pretty simple. I think the real question, though, is what do you do for DFS? Are you going to lock him? He's $9,800. So at that price tag, he needs, probably over 105, Dan. Like scoring wise, you're probably going to need like 105 plus, maybe like the 110s, somewhere in that range between 110, 120. I think
probably more than that. I think.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, just let me take a look. So I started building already. I was not expecting to get to a whole lot of them, but I'm getting to them at like a 40% clip. I've got them projected around like 30%, which I think 30% for ownership. I was thinking it might be a little high, but now that I'm looking at the top range, it goes 9,800, then it immediately drops down to 93, 91, flat 9K. So that with all the live dogs on the card, I'm not sure it's actually going to be that difficult to fit him into lineups. I probably will pull back a bit on 40% because seems a bit high for a guy who has never finished a fight inside the first round. They're usually like second, third round finishes, but his opponent is just so bad, man. There's really like Gamori. There's nothing. I didn't see anything to like about this guy.
Well, and there's a reason behind that. Like Talbot's not one of those guys who goes out there trying to like take your head off immediately. He kind of like lets the fight come to him. So that's why you're seeing like the later finishes and not the earlier finishes. Now, does he do that again? Like probably, I think he does, but you never know.
I think you really want the quick win bonus here with a knockdown. I think is I'm trying to think if there's a way he gets there in round 2. Like maybe if he knocks him down several times and then finishes.
Yeah, like what if he has 2 or 3 knockdowns and then a finish at the end of round 2? Like maybe
that could work, but that's most likely it's probably going to.
I think at 9,800, it's just very restrictive on the rest of your lineup, and I think that is what the real problem is.
There isn't really much else to pay up for though. The next most expensive guy is 93, and then 91, and then 9K, and we've got tons of viable dogs here. So I don't think he's going to be quite as hard to fit this week as he would. And
like look at the 9K range, Christine. Like you got Seruya, who I think will get ownership, but then you got Budai, who we talked about. He's coming in at like 15 to 17%. You got Joe Pyfer at 9K, and then it just drops down from there. So I think
if you want like three in the mid range, 3 to 4 in the mid range, which I think a lot of these mid range guys are going to score well. But that's just how it's setting up for me. But if he doesn't get the quick win bonus, then what are we looking at?
You're probably looking at
95 to 105
to like low hundreds, and that probably won't do. I mean, if you look at the top end of this slate, that could be enough.
Yeah, you never really know. Like, what if all those 9K guys fail? Like, well, like all the rest of them just fail. Maybe they lose. So, like, all of them lose somehow. Like, you don't know.
I think bottom line though, Talbot 9,800. It's not really a spot. It's not the spot
like Seruya and Simone, grapple heavy guys, and then I don't know, Pyfer. I kind of like. Then you already can't fit Talbot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but we're just saying like there's not a ton of other paths. Like you just gave like the other path. Like there's not a ton of like other ways to go though. So I'm going to be under on him just in my lineups too. I think he's going to come in. What do you think, Dan? Like 40%? What's his ownership, you think?
I've got him at 30, 29, just below 30. But I
think it's going to be higher.
I don't really think this is the spot. See, I don't know, because people do not like paying that much. Like, it's a lot of what I've been hearing, like the chatter around him. And, you know, to be fair, he doesn't really profile as someone who's going to get that quick win. So I don't know. I just don't think this is the spot to attack, you know, for leverage. I think I'm happy to just kind of come in around the field, and whatever happens, happens there.
Yeah. All right. So you guys both, do we all have him by finish? Like, I think he finishes his fight. I just think it's going to be round 2, probably, that he finishes the fight. I think the sub line at 6-1 is interesting. He doesn't have a lot of them, but I think, you know, if you think the guy's going to finish, he's minus 150 now by KO. Like, I don't know. I'm not doing that. You know, a minus 150. So I'll take a shot on the sub prop at 6-1. I just think if you know the guy's going to finish, like, there's only 2 ways he's doing it. He's either KO or sub. I'll take my chances with the bigger odds. So, all right, we're a little lower on the DFS side, but he's going to win. He's going to win by finish. It just depends how he does it. Like Dan says, if he gets a few knockdowns, maybe he could be optimal, or if he gets the quick win bonus, which I think it's the path you're rooting for, right? He just comes out there and knocks his head off early. So, and then
I think we have to mention Gamori, just because, you know, 6,400, it's free. You know, we get into you get into this territory where, with like such big favorites, where it's like, well, what if, you know, Talbot, what if he takes the wrong step and breaks his ankle? You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about super outlier things here. So I think if you are going to sprinkle in a little bit of Gamori, it's viable because anything can happen and he's super cheap. But if you are going to play him, you want to pay super close attention to the lineups that he's making it into. Like, you don't want to be leaving salary. You probably don't even really want another dog in the lineup. You know, you probably just want to, at that point, you're playing like chalk, expensive guys, make the best lineup you can that projects the best with him, because there's, you know, if you're playing Gamori, there's no need to kind of take on any more. You don't really need to do much else to get different.
If you get knocked out by William Gomez, I just can't play you. I'm sorry. There's a rule.
That is for me at all. I'm just saying, if you do choose to play him, like, don't bother going leverage in any other spot. You don't need to.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to a fight that I see the chat talking about a little bit here. We got Gene Silva, 7,900 for Silva against Charles Jordane, 8,300. Jordane was not happy about that 1.5 pound weight miss by Silva. He was not happy that he weighed in. He still had like an hour or two to try and lose the pound or whatever it was. He was kind of pissed. I saw him talking in a quick interview, and he was not very happy about it. But 8,300 for Jordane, Silva at 7,900. I think Silva is going to be a popular pick. He did not look good, like, walking off the scales, in my opinion. It definitely looked like it was a tough weight cut just in general, even though he still missed by 1 pound or 1.5 pounds. But I'm going with Charles Jordane. I want to say finish, but man, I think this fight goes to a decision if he wins. Maybe he finds a sub or something like that, but I think he's going to fight pretty smart. But I do think he wins this fight 8,300, and I'm taking him. So I'll be a little higher on him in DFS, because I do think even in a decision win, I think he could get you in the 90s in a decision win. So, which maybe at 8,300 could get there. So I like him. I'm going to be heavier on him. Dan, what do you got here? Jordane and Silva.
I picked Silva to win. It's not a particularly strong lean. I think Silva is kind of the more explosive, powerful striker, which I like, even though, you know, Jordane has never been finished. But you also have Silva, you know, he does bring some wrestling and grappling in, which Jordane doesn't really look to do much of offensively. And he's also got really poor takedown defense. So I think, you know, if this stays standing, could Jordane like point his way to a win? Yes, he's the more technical striker. He's got more crisp striking. But as far as like volume goes, they're both pretty much the same. Silva's just more aggressive, and I think he's gonna sort of press the issue more and could cause problems for Jordane. I've just never been very high on Jordane in general. You know, he's a guy who just seems like he's kind of okay and not exceptional anywhere. So, you know, it's not a particularly strong lean, but given all of that, I'm gonna lean Silva as the dog.
I feel like one of his biggest strengths is that he's just super tough, because he is
he's super
tough.
durable.
Like,
he's never been knocked out. So I've got Silva by decision. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he gets a knockout. So, you know, I believe the odds imply that he's one of the better inside the distance guys. But yeah, I mean, he's 33% implied to finish inside the distance. He's got a decent round one number, not as good as most of the favorites on the card, but as far as dogs go, he's one of the stronger round one finishes. Yeah, I mean, I like Silva to win. I like him better as a play. Just, you know, he's got more. I think he's got more paths. Jordane's
he's probably got more like upside, I guess, from a
so.
DFS perspective. I got Jordane, so I'm on the other side of that. Christine, break the tie here, 1-1. Who you got?
I like Jordane as well, just because I don't trust these debuting or young fighters, and he hasn't really proven much. He's not too impressive. He could just be like another overhyped prospect, whereas like Jordane, he's battle tested. He has 9 more professional fights. He's never been knocked out. He gets knockdowns. He's just, I think, more powerful. Maybe not more powerful. He might have him there, but he's definitely going to load up on volume. So if we think it's going to go to a decision, I think Jordane has it there because he's going to have more output in terms of volume. But his damage, he doesn't. He's like, what do you guys say? Pillow hands. Like he's not like going for the knockout as much as he is staying in the fight.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing too, when I was listening to him talk, it's the first fight in a while where he's had the height and reach, which in his recent fights, like against Woodsich, and this is like the first fight in a while, I think he said, where he's got like both of those pretty much, or they're equal in the reach, but he's got the height. So like, I thought that was interesting. He brought it up too. It was something like when they asked him about this fight, he's like, well, I haven't fought someone in a while who I've got like the height and reach advantage, or reach is, you know, the same as. So I think that's going to play a little bit of a part of him. And, you know, it's going to look different than like the Woodson fight, where Woodson's that's a tough fight for someone like Charles Jordane, who, you know, doesn't have the power and, you know, losing on the height and reach by a big amount. So I think that's an interesting point. All right, 2 for 1 on Jordane. Dan's the one on Silva. Let's move to the next fight. I think this will be a fun fight. I think this could be a banger of a fight from a DFS side. Maybe it's an actual fun fight. Someone goes out. We got Andre Fili, 8,600 for Fili on DraftKings against Cub Swanson, 7,600 for Cub. And I will just say, Cub's last fight, I remember it, but I went back and watched it, and he didn't win the fight. I don't know how he got the actual win, because he lost every single round, significant strike numbers he lost. And they weren't like a one strike. They were like multiple strikes difference. And it looked like on the damage side of things, he lost on the damage side because his face looked more messed up than Duwandu's face. Like it just, I watched that fight and I still don't understand how he won the decision. I like Cub Swanson. I know he's a guy that people root for. But I still don't understand that decision. It was a terrible decision, in my opinion. But he gets Andre Fili. He's a dangerous dude. I love this dude as a fighter, but he's one of those fighters where you watch him fight and he just should be better than what he actually is. Like I feel like he just disappoints constantly, doesn't like live up to what his actual talent level is. He can be put out. That's another thing. Leaves his chin up, can be put out, but also has the power to put you out. So it can bring fun fights. I go back to the Nathaniel Wood fight. If you want to watch a fun fight, man, watch that fight. That fight was a banger. It started off early where like they're both dropping each other. It's just, he's tough. He's a tough dude, but he can get chinned. So this is a tough fight for me. I'm going to go with Fili, though, at 8,600. I just think he's got the higher upside. And I do think Cub's going to stand in the pocket with him, which is dangerous because Fili's got power. And Cubs, he's not afraid to stand in the pocket. So I think this fight finishes, and I think it's a good fight for DFS. So I'm going to be in on this fight, picking Fili, though, to win. Dan, what say you?
I'm on Fili as well, but I think Swanson is super live, like we discussed before. Speed, he's going to be at a big disadvantage. I think Fili, he's faster. He mixes his strikes and targets better. He actually has some grappling upside. I think Swanson is a bit more vulnerable on the mat than Fili is. But ultimately, it's going to just be, it's more of like a youth and speed thing. Me back in Fili. I have him by decision, but like you also alluded to, both of these guys can be hurt. Fili was knocked out like pretty violently by Danny Gay not too long ago. So yeah, I mean, I think this fight DFS wise is also going to go overlooked because they're both, they're not cheap. Fili at 8,600, Swanson at 7,600. My projections love Fili though because he's not going to be getting owned like his inside the distance number says he should be. He's like 43% implied to win inside the distance. Just like my first initial run where I don't edit anything, I got like 50% of him. So I think there's high upside there. He is a bit overpriced, but he's projecting to come in around 20% owned. And for a guy that's like nearly 70% implied to win and a third of the time by knockout, I think 20% is a bit low. So I'll be getting over on that. I'll probably be getting over on Cub at 15 because, like we said before, that power is still there. He can still crack, and Fili can be hurt.
Yep, I do think this fight finishes, and I agree with you for DFS. I'd want to be over on both these guys. I am going to be over on both these guys. I think they're both good plays. I do think someone goes out. Christine, who you got here between Fili and Cub?
I'm with Fili as well, and I agree with you. I think this is a fight that we should target. There's been 16 finish losses between the both of them, so I think somebody's definitely getting finished here. Dan has a point that Cub Swanson is a live dog. He's got a better strength of schedule. Maybe this is another potential retirement fight. Never know. We know he's definitely not going to grapple, so this will take place on the feet. But if Fili was smart, that is definitely an angle that he can target, is maybe trying to grapple with him because he knows he has the edge there. You made a point. Fili has the height and reach advantage. He will attack the legs, body shots, so on and so forth. And I think if I'm going to hedge, I would do like 70-30 Fili. So yeah, my pick is touchy-feely.
I love that. Oh, I love that breakdown. I do think, I wish he used his, I think he's got grappling to use Fili. Like I wish I would trust that he would use it because it does feel like that could be a path. But I just don't know if he will. On the feet. Yeah, I just don't know. Unless they get into like a random scramble. Like you never know what can happen and he like snatches up something. I don't think it, but hey, 9-1 for submission if you want like a fun one. I don't think that's I always like the long props, so give me the long props here. But I saw this fight, if you go to exact method, by KO is -110. If you're kind of like this fight's a toss-up to you and you don't know if it's going to be Cub or Fili, you could just take the exact method at -110. I don't think it's a terrible look.
And DraftKings has a boost today for method of victory bet, so that's perfect.
Ooh, there you go. You get a little boost on that. What's the boost? Is it like?
I think it's a bonus, like you get a free bet back, and then there's you're entered into something to that effect.
Oh, okay.
But it's
There you
it's
go.
definitely for method. There's 2 of them today, but one of them is for method of victory bets. So I think that one's solid.
I didn't see that. I'll have to. I got to make sure I go in and click all those. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you go in and check those promos out. So, all right, there's a good DraftKings boost right there for the people on DraftKings. Let's go to the next fight here. We've got Marc-Andre Barriault, 7,200 for Barriault against Joe Pyfer here at 9K. I do feel like DraftKings, UFC knows what they're doing a little bit. And this to me feels like probably a get right spot for Mr. Pyfer here. I do think they like him. He is 9K coming off of his first loss in the UFC to Jack Hermanson, where, I mean, Hermanson just jabbed him and he gassed out. I think he went to the wrestling too late. By then he was already tired. I could see him going to the wrestling earlier in this fight, learning from that fight. And I do think he can get takedowns against Barriault, which I think would be his easiest path to victory. So I like Pyfer. I think he could finish 2 on the ground. He also does have big power. So you get both. And we all know Barriault likes to get into wars. So you got to be careful when you get into a war with the guy who has power like Joe Pyfer does. But yeah, I'm going Pyfer here. I think he finishes. I think the UFC knew what they were doing, putting these 2 together. I think it's a good matchup for him. So that's what I got. Dan, what say you on this fight?
Yeah, I'm on Pyfer as well. I agree that it's a get right spot. My only hesitation, well, it was my initial hesitation, and I kind of my concerns were eased a bit when I actually went back and watched, because in that Pyfer Hermanson fight, like Pyfer, I think you make an argument that he won the first 2 rounds, and he was taking it to him, but he just gassed, and Hermanson, the experience, especially 5-round experience, just managed to outlast him and pull out the win, which fair play to him. But, this one's only 3 rounds, although Marc-Andre Barriault does kind of present sort of the same problem, because his strength is just being able to push a pace, and his cardio, nicknamed the power bar, he can keep going and going. I just think Pyfer, he's more powerful. I think you're right that he's got better wrestling and grappling. Barriault is a bit one-dimensional. And although Barriault has been pretty durable throughout his career, I think Pyfer has a really good chance to kind of just come out aggressive, steamroll him early. I think that had Barriault's 1 knockout. I'm probably thinking of someone else. Yeah, it's Joe Pyfer, man. It's body bags. I don't think they're setting up Marc-Andre Barriault. It's International Fight Week. I was gonna get to this point with Talbot earlier, but it's like they're trying to showcase some of their guys, similar to last year with, I believe it was Bo Nickel and the or actually maybe it was Joe Pyfer. It was either Joe. I mix them up all the time, but it was either Pyfer or Nickel that they set up against like an Alaskan FC guy, who I know was a late replacement. But it's like, they want to highlight their guys, and Joe Pyfer is very much like one of the UFC's guys. Not to get too far down narrative street, but let's also bust out the age model again. Pyfer's got the 7-year age advantage there, so I like Pyfer.
Yeah, this is definitely a bet I'm going to take, which is plus 550 by sub. That's a bet I will bet for Joe Pyfer. I do think with the pressure of Barriault, he's going to kind of force the action early, and it could end up being early, finish here. So I like Pyfer. I know he's a tough dude to finish, but on the mat, I definitely think he has the advantage. So Christine, what do you got in this fight? 2-0 for Pyfer. Make it 3.
Yeah, I like Pyfer as well. I think he is definitely due for some redemption here. He's got a good strength of schedule. The only thing for DFS purposes, I think if he couldn't find the finish, it will definitely be lower volume. I believe he's training, let me just double check that, with Kenzo Gracie. So he is live for the sub, I would say, if that's the case. Is he training with him? Anyway, I think he also is a BJJ brown or black belt. I think I don't really like Barriault. I never did, never will, probably. So his only path I don't see a path for him. No, I'm
It's really
kidding.
just him out lasting.
Yeah,
That's his best shot.
it's for Joe Pyfer to tire out, and then he finds
He
like a
just
late
scores on the
finish.
volume round 3, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Or
what's him to win in
I
round
guess he
3?
could edge out a decision if it were to come to that, because he will probably be higher volume than Pyfer, because Pyfer is just looking for big bombs, whereas Barriault will piece him up a little bit. But I don't see that happening. I think Pyfer is well-rounded. I think he's live for the sub. I actually like the sub a lot too, JSU. So
Get in there, get in plus 550. It's a nice little
Woo!
bet there. So
We got to
That's
rebrand as
crazy.
a sub prop round table.
yeah, seriously, we gotta do it. Rip Kobe says Pyfer sub times Gunner B-Day Homer plus 3150. Do we gotta bet that just for the show right there? Those are the bets. Those are fun bets right there.
That's a nice bet. Yeah.
You throw even just like $10, $20. Yeah, you don't have to throw anything
Gunner's
massive.
just the guy.
Like that,
He's the guy.
yeah, that's a fun bet. I love bets like that. All right, let's go to the next fight here. All of us on the Pyfer train, and to I would say people are maybe feel somewhat split on this fight. We got Ian Machado Gary, 8,200 for Gary against Michael Venom Page, 8K on DraftKings for these guys. And this is a fight I'm probably not going to be interested in for DFS. I do think it's a decision fight. You got two guys who want to kind of do similar things. I mean, they want to stay on the outside. They want to kind of pick you apart, technical, but Michael Page just has this like really weird, awkward style that is really hard to figure out. Like you watch that Holland fight, and I'm just sitting there the whole time, just going, man, touch him, like do something. And he just couldn't figure him out. Like he couldn't figure him out for all 3 rounds. He ends up winning kind of a boring decision outside that spinning elbow, which, was pretty sweet. But I just think you got two guys who want to do similar things, and I think it lands us in a most likely boring split decision here. And I saw that. I threw that bet in the Discord yesterday, plus 350 for this to go to a split decision. I think we're going to get through 3 rounds of this fight, and we're going to be like, who won round 1? Who won round 2? Who won? Like literally, we're all going to be like, I have no idea who won this fight. Like, and then the judges are going to go and they're going to give us a scorecard, and then it's going to be probably Ian Machado Gary winning a split decision. I think that's what happens here. I think he wins the split decision. But I do think it's a very close fight. And I do think it's a boring DFS fight. Could be totally wrong. One of these guys could get put down and out, but I just don't see it. I think it's going to be close and boring. So, Christine, what do you got here? I got Gary. Who are you on?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Gary here. I think so Michael Page he's an interesting fighter. He's got a very different style to him. It's more like Taekwondo. He blitzes in, comes out. So he's very like methodical with his shots. He trips up his opponent with timing, which I think could throw Gary off and cause him to be a little more held back in his approach. I think Gary, this is another spot where if he was smart, he could try to take him to the mat and go that route. But, I think Michael Page, a bet I like is under on significant strikes because he's just very low volume. But if he catches you, he catches you, like with Kevin Holland. But I just think Gary is better all around. He's training with Oliveira. So he's definitely been working on his ground game. And I like him everywhere here. In terms of DFS, he is 8,200 is a decent price, but I don't know if he's going to get a finish here. That's the thing. And if he doesn't, I don't think he's going to score that well. So I will be probably with the field on Gary, but I do think he's going to win.
Yeah, Dan, I think we're at least in agreement that this fight could end up being a boring decision. What do you think here with this fight?
Yeah, I'm on Gary. We bet Gary heavy early in the week when he was like minus 130. I believe he's like a minus 175 now. The number was even better when it dropped. But yeah, we're right off the rip. I'm just going to bust out the age model. There's an 11-year gap here. Gary is 11 years younger. And these are two guys who, this is one of those matchups where it's like two guys kind of going in separate, opposite directions in their careers. Gary's on the ascent. Page, last time out, his win notwithstanding, he's new to the UFC, but like he's not new to the game. He's been in Bellator for the last decade. There's a reason, a myriad of reasons he never made it over to the UFC, but they obviously didn't pursue him super hard. In the tape that I watched, it's mostly him, he crushes cans, which he's great at, that's great fun. But when he comes up against someone who's got, some serviceable wrestling or grappling, he just can't really compete. The grappling is not good. The wrestling is not good. Gary hasn't really shown too much wrestling or grappling. He's mostly content to just strike from the outside. But I think if he shows up with some, that he can beat Page there on the mat pretty handedly. I also think just in the striking, Page is like very frustrating. He's got that kind of sideways karate stance. You saw Holland get really frustrated with it. He is really hard to hit, but I do think that Gary is quicker. I think he's the better technical striker. They both have power. This fight, like Gary, outside of Jordane, he's got like the second lowest odds to win inside the distance out of any of them. So I think this fight is going to go pretty overlooked. I have Gary at like 25%, Page at 16. But, at these prices, if either of them lands a knockout, even if it's in the second round, they're going to compete for the optimal. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in Gary here. And I think part of the reason we were able to get such a good price on him early in the week, and his DFS price, obviously, is because people just don't like him.
Yeah, people definitely don't like him. I will say, Michael Page, he sucks on the mic. Absolutely terrible. If you watch that press conference, he was just horrible. Gary already beat him there. He's already in his head. He already beat him on the mic. He's probably going to beat him on the mat. I see Blake, you were talking about the grappling. I see Blake Davis in chat talking about a submission for Gary, 10-1. Gary by sub or KO at plus 300.
He's one of those guys that keeps his hands low. So he kind of pages. So he kind of depends on being able to, quickly evade strikes, but also manage distance. And I think he's going to have a much tougher time doing that with Gary than he did with Kevin Holland. I think this is a much worse matchup for Page. I think Gary should roll. And even though the knockout odds are, less than ideal, I think, considering he keeps his hands low, Page does, and he's kind of reliant on evading these strikes, I think Gary is super live to catch him. Daniel Rodriguez had never been knocked out until he fought Ian Gary, and he just wasted him with a fucking perfect head kick just out of nowhere. So I think Gary is extremely live to, the more I talk about it, he's pretty live to land the knockout here. And it's kind of what we talk about every week, but especially last week. It's like, we talk mostly about the most probable way these fights will play out, the most probable way somebody will win. But it also pays to look like, well, what are the less probable ways someone like Ian Gary can win? And he's only going to be 25% owned at 8.2K in a matchup you think that he should win pretty handedly. I think he's a pretty good play.
Yep. Yeah, always look at both sides. Obviously we want to give the path that we think is most likely because, that's the way we're probably going.
That's what the
9 times out of 10, that's what the picks are for, right? But like you said, for DFS, your thinking should almost be reversed, right? It's the different style from like the picks thinking. So there's two different ways to think about it if you're playing DFS and if you're, doing just the picks and stuff like that. So it's a good point. Let's go to another women's fight here. We got Mayra Bueno Silva, 8,800 for Silva against Macy Chasson, 7,400. And Dan, I want to start with you because you said this is one of the more interesting DFS fights because you got this fight being pretty much a pick 'em at -110, or at least it was earlier this morning. It's -110 both ways here. Pretty much a toss up. And there's a $1,400 DraftKings salary difference here, Dan. So I would assume that Macy Chasson is going to be pretty popular in DFS, one of the more popular dogs on the entire card. So what are you looking at for ownership, and who do you like on this fight?
Yeah, so Macy, she's extreme value. She's going to be a cash lock. She's going to get played heavily. I know the women fighters usually go a little bit under-owned, but I think the value here is going to be too much for a lot of people to pass up. And also, looking on the other side, people really don't like Bueno Silva, and her last performance against Raquel Pennington, really nothing to write home about. She's got a lot of holes in her game, but she's also very dangerous. So, I understand. I pick Chasson because I think, the size advantage, she does have a wrestling advantage. I think she can eke out a decision over MBS. Like, MBS does have pretty terrible cardio. So if you can get her outside of the first round or two, you've got a pretty good shot, I think. But tournament-wise, you're now in a situation where you've got Chasson is projecting to be 34% owned, and MBS is going to be 14% owned. You mentioned the price discrepancy. MBS is going to be expensive at 8,800. She's up there around, Ricky Simone, Jillian Robertson, Joe Pyfer. Above her is Seruya. So I understand why her ownership is being squeezed, but she's extremely dangerous early. And if she, her win condition is essentially like an early submission. She's got power in her hands as well. I think she's certainly more skilled on the mat when it gets down there, even though she can be controlled. But yeah, all of that is to say at 8,800, I think MBS is an elite tournament play this week. Yeah, I mean, that ownership is just way, way, way too low for someone with her upside. 32% implied to snatch up a sub, 34% overall to win inside the distance. I'm going to be getting to a lot of her. I'm going to be getting a lot more than 14%. And I'll probably hate myself for it, but I have to. It's like a process play at this point.
Yeah, it's an ownership play. I feel like this fight is similar in ways when you're looking at it to the Robertson, Michelle Waterson Gomez fight, where it's like you look at both these girls, and one girl I think has more finishing upside in Mayra Bueno Silva, but we've also seen her get controlled at times, especially up against the cage, and lose fights because of that. And Chasson could do that. The only difference, though, is that the lines have flipped, and the cheaper fighter is now the favorite, because I just looked on DraftKings. Now it's moved to -115, Chasson. So the line is definitely going in her way, and she's the cheaper fighter. So that's like the only difference in this fight here. But I do think if it finishes, it's probably Silva getting the finish. And I do think if it goes to the cards, that's, where Chasson has the leg up in a decision win, where it's just a little more control and maybe a little more output. But I do agree with you. The danger is more on the Bueno Silva early side here. So for DFS, it kind of makes sense to get a little overweight on Bueno Silva here. I'm probably going to be at the field on Chasson, just at the the price that she is. But I was going back and forth on like fade. I don't think I need to fade. I've already made like other stands with other dogs around her price tag. I talked about Oliveira early. Her Cub Swanson, I think, is a decent dog play around her range. And then we got a couple other ones. So yeah, I'm probably going to be lower than the field on it. I can see her coming in, though, pretty popular here, Dan, even though it is a woman's fight. Like, I think, that she's going to get pushed pretty heavily. What'd you say her ownership was at right now? 30?
Chasson, I've got her at 34.
Yeah, I think it could push to 40 or close to 40. Would not shock me at all if she got that high. Christine, what do you got here on this fight?
I agree with agree with you, JSU, with I like the dog. I think Macy Chasson has shown that she's gritty. She's going to fight for your money. Buenos Aires on the what did you call her? What's her nickname? MBS, sorry. She is up against it though. Well, in terms of like UFC fighters getting the boot after 3 loss narrative. So she kind of will have that chip on her shoulder coming into this fight. But you said it perfectly. Like if Chasson gets taken down, it's probably over for her. On the feet, you know, MBS is not a strong striker. And I think Chasson will piece her up. She'll have volume. And I think she can edge out the decision here. And at that price, I think she's a solid play as well. But I do agree with Dan also, where if MBS is going to win, it's going to be by takedowns, control time. She could definitely get the sub as well. So there's that at such a low ownership. I'm shocked too. I'm seeing 16% owned, which is weird, but it's because her price it's a weird price for her. And I think most people are going to go to Chasson as a dog on this card. So, but I like Chasson to win by decision.
Yeah, Don Yeezy, yes, over 2.5 takedowns for Chasson. I would go under. I think it's a bad plan to try and take down Bueno Silva because her grappling, even like from her back, she's super dangerous. Like that would not be the game plan if I was her. I do think though she's going to get control like up against the cage more though. I do see like the clinch playing into this fight a little bit. But I think over 2.5. I'm going to go under on that. What do you guys think? Would you go over or under on the 2.5 takedowns for Chasson?
I don't.
I would always go under.
Yeah, I would go under.
Things that can happen, you know.
Yeah.
Your downside is much more immense with an over bet in that situation.
Yeah,
so many things
I agree.
Like the fight ends early, you know. You're probably not getting your 3 takedowns.
Yep. All right, let's go to here. Third to last fight on the card. We got Roman Dolidze, 8,400 against Anthony Lionheart Smith at 7,800. This fight I went back and forth on because I don't think Dolidze is very good. I think he's got power. The volume's really not there with him on the feet because he's trying to just land that big shot. And then he does have like the grappling and stuff like that. He can at times, get takedowns and stuff, but I just don't love him. I feel like, he should win, but this line and everything, I think Anthony Smith is the play. Like I went back and forth on it. I think I'm going to change my mind mid-show because coming into this, I think I had Dolidze winning, but I'm going to go with Anthony Smith. 7,800 for me. I think he can cover that tag if he wins. So I'm going to go with him probably a little more in DFS, but I don't know what it is. For me, it's not a super confident bet on Anthony Smith, but I am going to probably bet him. It's probably more that I don't like Dolidze than anything else, though. Like Anthony Smith, we know what he is. He's a veteran. He's going to grind. He's tough. He's got skills, but it's not like he's anything special anymore, but he's good enough, I think, to beat someone like Dolidze. So that's my pick. I'm going Anthony Smith. Change my mind as we get to the show, but I can do that. Dan, who you got here?
I'm going Dolidze. I just can't, last time out notwithstanding, I can't back Anthony Smith in the year 2024. I just think Dolidze, he's a better striker. He's more powerful. Smith's best chance, I believe 4 of his 5 wins, 4 of his 5 most recent wins have been by submission. But like we discussed with previous fights, like he has to get the fight to the mat. And Dolidze is not really rocking the best takedown defense, but Smith doesn't really have good wrestling. Like you said, I don't have an especially strong lean here, but I got to side with Dolidze inside the distance. Smith, he's been getting hurt badly. He doesn't take it well anymore. I think, it's funny to see kind of like the vibe switch a little bit on Anthony Smith, because up until his last time out, it was like, this guy's dust, glue factory. I still feel that way. But some people, some people's opinions seem to have turned a bit because, Petrino ran headfirst into a submission. Yeah, I just can't back Anthony Smith. I didn't dive especially deep into this one because I saw Anthony Smith. I saw Dolidze. I was like, Dolidze's got the power to take this guy out. I'm not especially interested in this one in DFS, aside from a few sprinkles on each of them, just because they both do have finishing upside. But I think the most likely thing that happens here is they both come out aggressive. And then if neither of them gets the finish early, it's going to slow way, way down. And we're going to have like a light heavyweight slog where you're going to be like going for snacks at the bathroom or some shit.
Yeah, it might be one of those fights where you just want to take a drink or snack break. If it gets out of the first round, it could be pretty boring. But Christine, break the tie, I guess. Smith, Dolidze, who you got?
Yeah, I'm on Dolidze as well, and it pains me because I was a Lionheart fan. I always will be, but he hasn't outside of the last fight.
Traitor.
Okay, the fight before the last fight, we were all tilting. He was hanging on by a thread, and it was painful to watch. He looked like, I don't know, it hurt to see him getting his ass kicked like that. And I think it's possible that can happen again. I mean,
he does take a beating.
Victory. I think on the mat, I think if he does something quick early, I can see that happening, but I think if this goes 3 rounds, he's just going to look like a washed old man getting his ass beat. So,
Christine, I've seen this question a few times, actually. People wondering where you're broadcasting
it's a soundproof room because everyone always complains about how I sound.
Yeah, you sound great. No, it's definitely
Thanks,
helping. I like it. You sound great. The people were just wondering, you know what I mean? She's okay, everybody. All right. So if anyone was wondering, Christine is fine. All right. She's not being held hostage or anything like that. She is okay. Because I saw that earlier.
Under her own free will.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All right, let's go to the main.
This is where we put JBC when he's acts out of bit.
Yeah, exactly. JBC, we got to actually put him in a block C or something like that. But all right, let's go to the final 2 fights here. We've got, I think this is going to be a banger of a fight here. Diego Lopes or Lopez. I still don't even know how you say it, if it's Lopes or Lopez. 8,400 on DraftKings versus Brian Ortega, 7,800 on DraftKings here. I got the Lopes side or Lopez at 8,400. I think this is going to be a great fight. 2 guys that can both grapple really, really well. Obviously, we know Brian Ortega is never out of a fight, even when he's getting his ass beat, which has happened before, like where he's just absolutely losing, and then he just finds a way to pull out a win in the end, because if you make a mistake against this dude, he will capitalize on that. And he's good on the feet too. It's not just that he's all grappling. He is good on the feet. He's got solid striking. But he's going up against a guy who I think he just poses a little more danger in all of the aspects, not just grappling, even though obviously Ortega's amazing grappler. Lopez is a great grappler. He's awesome at it too. And he's got massive power. So I don't think this guy is going to be afraid no matter where this fight goes. Like if this fight goes to the ground, I don't think he's going to be afraid. I think he can find ways to like stay safe. And if this stands on the feet, I do think he's got like the power upside here in this matchup, and his striking is improving. I just think he's got more ways to win this fight, and I'm going to go with Lopez. But I think for DFS, this is going to be one of those fights where I think the winner's optimal, and I'm going to just lock this fight for DFS, just speaking strictly from a DFS side. So I like this fight a lot. I'm going to be super high on Lopez at 8,400 and be really heavy on him. But I don't hate anyone who likes the Ortega side. I don't like what he did either, where he told him at like 3 or 4 a.m. that he wasn't making weight. That was bullshit, by the way, like total bullshit on his part, I think. But whatever. doesn't matter. 155, whatever they fight at, doesn't really matter, I guess. Dan, what do you got here on this fight, Lopes and Ortega?
Yeah, I don't think the weight stuff is that egregious just because, Ortega has been planning to move up to 155 and he's coming.
But you tell him at 4 a.m.? Like you didn't know this a day or two
little
ago.
gamesmanship
Come on,
there.
man. Come on.
Hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right?
There you go. All right. Just say it then.
I don't dislike cheating. We say it every week. They don't penalize you for cheating, so why the fuck wouldn't you cheat?
Well, they didn't penalize what's his name for grabbing the cage and get Shara from grabbing the friggin' cage to getting taken down and probably submitted, which was
we're so close to our Tricoli sub, and we got.
I'm still pissed about that. We got absolutely. I mean, he was gonna lose if it got out of that round, probably, but that changed the entire fight. And I don't care what anyone says. Like that makes the whole difference. You giving all your energy to get that takedown, you finally get it, and he just grabs the cage. Complete bullshit. How do you not take a point? What's the point of being able to take a point if that's not a point? Like, I don't know what a point is. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, why wouldn't you foul? They don't penalize you. Fuck it.
It's crazy.
On to this fight, though. Lopes is a guy that I was not high on when he first came in. I've probably faded him just about every time out, and he's made me look like an asshole every time out. The guy obviously primarily great jiu-jitsu, great subs. He's a little too comfortable working off his back for my taste personally, for the most part. But lately he's shown that he's got some power in his hands. The guy can crack. He can knock people out. So that's a new dimension to his game that he's added. And Ortega, another one, like his best. He's a better striker than people give him credit for. Obviously, he's like an elite submission grappler. The wrestling is kind of whatever. But he's got a lot of wear and tear on him. He's gotten the absolute shit kicked out of him. To his credit, he's been able to hang around in these fights and win some of them. Yair last time out really sticks out, where things were not looking good for him early in that fight. I don't really think that highly of Yair either, to be perfectly honest, as far as like the top flight featherweights go. So all that is to say, I think Lopes, if he gets Ortega in trouble, because he's more well-rounded than Yair. Yair is more of like a striker, right? So I think if Lopes gets Ortega in trouble, if he does follow him to the ground, he's going to finish him either with, the ground and pound, which Yair wasn't able to do, or he's going to be able to, club and sub, lock something up. He's way more crafty on the ground than Yair was. So all that said, I'm going to be picking Lopes. I think this is a great fight for DFS. It's going to be owned as such. Ortega at 27%, Lopes at 32%. I'm probably going to come in around there. I know a lot of people are talking about locking this fight. I guess I see it. More inclined to kind of shove on the Lopes side, though, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think I'm going to shove on the Lopes side, to be honest. Plus 180 to finish with KO, TKO is Lopes right now, which is interesting. The sub numbers are the same, plus 550 for both these guys. I agree with you, though. I don't think he's going to be afraid to follow him down. Like, if he does drop him or something like that, he's definitely not going to be afraid to, like, go down into the ground game with them. I don't think either of these guys are afraid of the other. I just think it could cancel it out. And if it cancels it out, it might be a stand-up battle for a lot of this fight, which I do think probably favors Lopes a little bit. So that's where we're at here. Christine, what do you got in this fight?
I actually like Ortega here. I just think that I think Lopes is finishing fights so quickly that it's hard to get a read on his full abilities. And I think Ortega is proven. There's a reason why he was in the top 5 for so long. But Lopes can crack. He's very, very powerful. So he can definitely catch him. But, Ortega has like a legendary, metal chin. But his defense is not too great, his striking defense. And if Ortega takes him down, I think that it is going to be very dangerous for Lopes. I think that Ortega has more paths, and I think that if it exceeds the first round, that Ortega is going to start looking better and better for the win there.
All right, there we go. 2 for 1. Christine on Ortega, me and Dan on the Lopes side. Christine getting some love in the chat too. Love to see that. Let's move on to the main card, or the main fight on the card.
Thanks,
here.
guys.
We've got Alex Pereira here. Pereira 8,500, and Yuri Prochazka 7,700 for Prochazka. That's Christine's boo, or whatever you want to call it. So we'll start with Christine. Yeah, next ex-husband. We'll start with you, Christine, here. Talk about why you like Yuri here. This is obviously a rematch. They did fight once before, and Pereira got it done that fight. Why do you like Yuri, though, in this second go-around?
I think that Yuri has shown that in the face of adversity, he tends to get hyper-focused on fixing and correcting what he's seen of himself in prior fights. So I think this Pereira thing has been looming over him for a long time. And of course he had that injury that he came back from, but in the last fight, I think he kind of proved to himself that he still got it, and he's fully healed and able to, take people on. My only issue with Yuri is the leg kicks. Like he doesn't check the leg kicks, and Rakic was killing him there. And he almost lost that fight. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like he was losing that fight until he pulled it off. I do like this shove that Yuri, I was telling Dan about it, where I was watching his fights, and he has a sneaky boxing shove where he kind of just gives them a push that throws them off because they're not expecting it. And once they're off their equilibrium is off, or they're like, what the hell did he just, he knocks them, and then he monopolizes on that. Another thing I liked in the Rakic fight was right before the fight was called, how he took him down, but he kind of grabbed his arm and held his arm behind his back, and he's very powerful. He's huge. And I think that he has an advantage that we haven't really seen yet, which could be getting Pereira down on the mat. I think that if Yuri utilizes his grappling, which he does have grappling, he just doesn't use it. He hasn't been in the position to, but I think he can edge it out there. Obviously he can knock him out in many different ways. And I think his style, his striking defense is good. He has a lot of feints. He moves in a weird way where you can't really get a good read on him. Whereas Pereira is an excellent striker as well. He's extremely powerful. He's very dangerous, but he will have to hit Yuri with a bomb. And maybe, actually, his leg kicks are good, which is very, very dangerous for Yuri here too, because if he gets a couple, Pereira leg kicks, he's going to have big problems. As we've seen, his legs can get taken out pretty quickly, and he starts crumbling. But I think he's durable. I'm 60-40 here, Yuri, but I think Pereira is obviously the favorite for a reason. I think I don't know. Yuri's gonna win.
Yeah, honestly, Dan, I was a little surprised that this line was as close as it was. I thought Pereira was going to come in a little bigger of a favorite right now, and not that he's not. Obviously, he's still he's minus 148. I thought it was going to be more like minus 170, minus 175. Honestly, he's already won before, but I thought that was a little interesting. What do you see here on this fight? Obviously, Christine's on the Yuri side.
Well, I'm on the Yuri side as well. I was on the Alex side last time, and honestly, watching the fight, Alex ultimately coming out with the win, I felt pretty fortunate to come out on the right side of that. I thought Yuri looked really good for a lot of the beginning of that fight. He had, he was able to land a takedown early. He had Alex hurt halfway through the second round before, he rushed in, going for another takedown, started eating some elbows, and then I think it was a bit of an early stoppage. Obviously, Alex had him in full mount. It was probably, going to continue going the way it was going, but I would have liked to see more. I think all the concerns about like Yuri defensively are extremely valid. That's obviously the weakest part of his game, and going up against a guy like Pereira, that can be a huge problem because Pereira, he only needs one shot to knock you out. And like we saw against Hill, like he doesn't even need to hit you flush. Like that hook that he caught Hill with just kind of like grazed the front of his face and just completely turned his fucking lights out. So, that's a concern. The leg kicks are a concern. But like Christine mentioned before, I think Yuri does have more paths to victory. Like Alex is kind of, obviously he's an elite striker. But the wrestling and the grappling really aren't there. Like the defense has, improved slowly over time. But, like we saw against Jan, arguably he lost that fight against Jan. And that happened, in the wrestling and grappling exchanges. So, as big of an Alex fan as I am, I'm definitely going with Yuri here. I think, I just keep bringing up age. He is younger. I think he's more durable. I think he has better cardio. Like we've seen Alex get, knocked out badly, and we've seen him get hurt in the middle of fights that he's ultimately won. So I think Alex is a bit more vulnerable here than the public is really taking into account. And I think Yuri is the more well-rounded fighter, like MMA fighter when it comes down to it. I don't know if I mentioned this before I started, but I find it really interesting. It seemed that the public was mostly on the Yuri side the first time around. And now things have happened in the interim. Each has had, other fights. And now it seems to have flipped to the Alex side, but I'm not really sure why outside of recency bias,
Yeah. I mean, I was on the Alex side the first time around. I get why people have flipped to the Alex side. I mean, he's a champ. People have seen him. He's had some really good times in the UFC. UFC's obviously building him up. He's the star right now. He's the man. So I get why the popularity's on his side over Yuri. I think Yuri is, though, still a fan favorite. I think people like his style of fighting. People like how he fights. But I disagree with you on certain things, especially how good Yuri is. Yuri's defense is atrocious at times, especially the leg kicks. But dude just walks through hell. And I don't understand it. Like Christine said, he was getting whooped by Rakic and then found a way. His biggest strength, no one talks about, but it's his mental fortitude, which is he can just, his legs don't work, but it doesn't matter. He keeps moving forward. I don't understand though. He's limping, but he's walking you down limping. And it was the craziest thing against Rakic, because obviously I was on the Rakic side. I'm like, yes, we got him. We just he's going to be done.
Well, Yuri,
he
was never done though. He was never done.
I think he does that because he's looking to set up the counter. And I think that is where we've seen him have success. So when he's not checking, but he counters the right way, he monopolizes on that.
Yeah, but he wasn't even countering at first. He was just taking them. In the beginning of that fight,
I think with Rakic, he didn't have a choice because his leg was so beat up that he had to do that.
But my point is that he doesn't even try defensively, it feels like. He just doesn't care. And against someone like
strong
Pereira,
man right there.
yeah. But against someone like Pereira, whose leg kicks are probably the best leg kicks that we've seen in the UFC. And the one thing that he does amazing is he doesn't really telegraph them. He just he throws it, but it's really hard to read when he's throwing it. And they're so strong. And like Dan said, he's got such a strong, even when he's not putting everything into it, like the hook that he caught Hill with. I just think it's too much for Yuri to just walk through. Someone like Alex Pereira, I think it's too much for him to just walk through stuff like that and win. Now, maybe he does. Maybe he gets the grappling going, because I do think that's his best path is for sure just to walk through it, try and get the grappling.
Injury, is that on his primary kicking foot, or?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea. I don't think he cares,
Yeah,
honestly.
I did not really factor in I didn't factor in the fact that it's like, they're both coming in on short notice, the toe injury. Like these two
The
guys,
toe.
none of that shit matters. Once that fucking cage door locks
He's
behind
throwing
them,
those kicks. I don't care what
Yeah.
his
He's
toe
like, cut off
feels
the
like.
toe. I'm going in.
these two are dogs, man. These two are dogs. This is going to be an absolute.
Especially him. So I think this is a lock fight, though. Honestly, I'm going to lock this fight. I'm going to be heavier on the Pereira side. It sounds like you guys are going to be heavier on the Yuri side of this fight.
The problem with Pereira, DFS wise too, is he's super reliant on an early knockout. He doesn't really score that well because he doesn't have the wrestling or grappling upside, and he doesn't really throw that much volume. So you really, there's a pretty strong mid range on this card as well. So for Pereira to be optimal, he's going to have to beat out Lopes, Robertson, Dolidze, which isn't impossible, but he needs the first round knockout. Most likely he can maybe get there with a late second round if he accumulates some stats.
I think he can get there with the second round knockout. I think he can get there.
I think it's possible, but it's obviously a thinner window. I think Yuri has more. I mean, obviously he's priced better. The ownership is about dead even for both of them, and I just think Yuri has more scoring upside in addition to thinking he wins. So you're muted.
All right. Well, sorry about that. There we go, though. We got 2 for 1. 2 of you guys on Yuri. I'm on the Pereira side.
Love to see it, Dan.
Yeah. Christine's got someone on her team this time. That's fine.
Yuri.
Obviously, guys, hit the like button. RPS15 is the promo code if you want 15% off your first monthly or weekly payment over at Rumpier Sports. And we've got single sport packages, too. So if you just want to come in for the MMA side, you can do just the MMA package, the bet side. The golf, we got all the sports. WNBA's rocking right now. Soccer's rocking with Copa and in the Euros right now. We got all the bets and the DFS stuff for those sports as well. So it's not just the main sports. We've got the secondaries and NASCAR, the Cup Series, all that stuff, Xfinity. We got all the DFS, the bets for all that stuff. So check us out over at Rumpier Sports. RPS15 is the promo code. All right, before we get out of here, let's just give our favorite bet, and then we'll get on out of here. Christine, do you have I know you like to give your dog pick of the week. You can give your dog, or you can just give your favorite overall bet.
Well, we all know who the dog pick of the week is going to be.
Yuri.
It's my man, Yuri Prochazka. No magic. Hashtag no magic this week.
Yeah, no magic. All right, Yuri. Yuri's your pick.
You know what? I'll do like a flyer bet here to play into the narrative I like here. 1 second. What is Yuri by sub? So Yuri by sub plus 1,000.
Now you're speaking my language a little bit here. Plus 1,000 on a sub. That's my language. So all right.
I would
Dan,
love that.
What's your sub play of the week? Because you always give the subs. You got to keep going with the bit here.
Oh wow, I actually didn't have a sub prop. I was gonna say Ian Gary. He's up to minus 162. We bet it earlier at minus 130. I think that's still a good price for Gary. I think we're getting the everybody hates Gary discount. But for a sub prop, I mean, I believe Talbot has a pretty good number for sub.
Yeah, he's 6-1. I like that prop.
Yeah, 6-1 by sub. I like a little sprinkle on that because, obviously that money line is completely unbettable. So if you want a little something on that, I like the sub.
Yeah, I was going to give that out, so I'll give another sub prop out. Joe Pyfer plus 550 by sub, I think, is another interesting sub prop if you already got the Talbot one. So there you go. There's all the picks, guys. RPS 15. Hit the like button on your way out. Leave a comment if you got anything. Hopefully you like it, but if you got some criticism, you can throw it our way too, respectfully, of course. And hopefully we'll see you in the Discord for Dan, Showdown, Christine, and myself. We'll check you guys later. Till then, we're out. Peace.